When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's gods entitle them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with a certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundations on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence, indeed, will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for the light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, despotism, it is their right, it is their duty, to throw off such government, and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He has refused his assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance, unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained. And when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people, unless those people
Can you
would
hear me?
relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable
Yeah,
to
that's why.
tyrants only. He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records. For the sole purpose This is the preamble of the Declaration of Independence, as well as the opening argument, and just a mere sample of the grievances the colonies had, the founding fathers had, against the King of England. There are a lot more. I cut out. Well, there are a lot more to read. Unfortunately, I'm not going to read them all, but I will go to the last three paragraphs. Nor have we been wanting in attentions to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislator to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our immigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and we have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. They too have been deaf to the voice of justice and consanguinity. That is a tough word to say. We must therefore acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation and hold them as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace friends. We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America in General Congress, assembled appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do, in the name and by the authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are of right ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states they had the full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. 1776. In 6 years, celebrate 250 years? No, we already celebrated that. 76, yeah. No, yeah, 250 years. I'm horrible at that kind of math. 250 years of independence. I think now, just in listening to that, if you replace the king with our current governing body, Congress, the Supreme Court, even the presidency, they are now engaging in the same acts that we went to war to separate ourselves from. I don't care what side you sit on, if you're on the right or if you're on the left. This week, which by the way, it is Sunday, December 13th, is the time of this recording. But this week, after numerous states, I believe 17 altogether, petitioned the Supreme Court to hear their case, the Supreme Court refused.
Mm-hmm.
The government no longer has any interest in the states. They are working alone, and I believe it is time for us to seriously, as a nation, look to what we have to do to separate ourselves from Washington, D.C. The government body that was established following the Revolutionary War has failed. It has become corrupt, disillusioned, and poisoned. And its poison is spreading through every other government body at a state level and most times at local levels. That's not our typical opening intro, but that's what I have. What do you think, Mr. Will?
Welcome to the revolution. That is the same thing that leftists have been saying for a decade now. You're just now waking up to the corruption? Congratulations.
Oh, no. I've known about the corruption. Don't get it wrong. I've known about the corruption, but I had hope.
But until this presidency, until this situation, which, by the way, has been handled for the most part by the book, from what I have read. Now, I've read other articles where, I've read right-leaning articles, left-leaning articles, supposed neutral articles on this. You're talking about the election and overturning the election.
No, that really honestly is a small part. I don't care about overturning it. What I'm actually referring to is the Texas Attorney General puts forth a lawsuit on 4 states.
Uh-huh.
Okay. and there were 17 other states that signed on with him. There were 100 members of Congress that signed on with him. Now, whether they're Democrats, Republicans, I don't know. I haven't looked up everybody that signed on with him.
Okay.
But my fact is, 17 states signed on with Texas. 100 representatives signed on with Texas.
To do what?
They want the Supreme Court to hear them as far as the results of the elections in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Georgia. But like I said, I'm not even talking about the elections. I'm talking. So let's just say 17 states and 100 members of Congress petition the Supreme Court to hear a case, and the Supreme Court just refuses.
Well, from what I've read, they refused because of a procedural error. They labeled it as one thing when they should have labeled it as something else, but that's beside the point. But at the same time, the Supreme Court, when it comes to states' issues, they tend to leave the states' issues alone, especially when it comes to things like voting and voter registration and all of that.
But my point is that the checks and balances, that's what they're there for.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? There's a problem with something in the country, the Supreme Court is supposed to resolve this issue. They're supposed to take it, look at it, compare it to the Constitution, and find out where it sits.
The Supreme Court is a check on the other two branches, not a check on the states, to be clear.
I understand that. But there are 17 states and 100 representatives taking up a lawsuit against a body of the government.
Okay.
So it has to be examined.
Yes, and I'm sure it will be when they have all their ducks in a row. But apparently, they didn't have all their ducks in a row, red tape wise. And you go before the Supreme Court, they want everything on the up and up. So there's no room for wiggle room for dissension in their decision.
But the wiggle room in a legal case, okay, so if you go into any trial, if you're a prosecuting attorney and you don't have all your ducks in a row,
mm-hmm.
what happens? The defense has the opportunity to counter and to tear apart your argument. Okay,
mm-hmm.
So if the ducks are in a row, the Supreme Court should hear the case, and then the other side should get their 2 cents in the matter.
But the Supreme Court does not work like a regular
I understand that. I understand that.
I've actually watched Supreme Court hearings. They have one side talk, and then the other side talk. There's no interruption. There's none of this legal drama that you see, and it's very robotic.
I know, but that's my point is that they just didn't hear it. Oh, that sucks. Why did that come up like that? That was loud. Sorry. I'm not sure how to edit that one out. Turn those down. Those are down. Maybe that just came through my headset. Okay, sorry. But to continue on here, we'll go back to governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed.
Mm-hmm.
We have to withdraw our consent if we haven't already, because we're not getting the things in our world that we need attention given to. For example,
conservatives are just crying because they didn't get their way in the election, and this is the same. This is the same argument that happened in 2016 with the liberals, with the far left wing. Everybody cries when they don't get their way. Sit down, shut up, you lost.
But you can't outright say that we lost. There are things.
Who got more electoral votes?
Huh?
Who got more electoral votes?
Electoral votes, which are decided by.
Who got more electoral votes?
As of right now,
answer the question. Did. Thank you.
Biden did. But how did he get them? Truckloads of ballots dropped off in the middle of the night.
Through the due process of the act of voting.
The due process act of voting. So, what? Dead people allowed to vote. People who leave states are allowed to vote in states.
Dead people who voted before. Okay. That has been a thing. That has been a thing in every single election since the inception of the country. Why is it such a big deal now? It's not as big of a deal as you think it is. It's not as big of a
When
swing
you
as you think it is.
have a state that has 102% of the registered voters vote, that's a flag. Something was done wrong. When you have votes that are being counted 10 to 15 days after the scheduled election date, with no way of verifying is when they were sent in, something is wrong.
And I'm sure that will be fixed by the next election.
Next time.
Because look at it this way. You got to look at it this way. All right. This was the first election where mail-in voting had been heavily used. I mean, yes, mail-in ballots have been used before, but not to the level which they have now because of the epidemic. Whereas in previous elections, you may have had, a couple thousand, 2,000-3,000 mail-in ballots at the most. Now you're looking at millions of mail-in ballots. Even if you had some system in place to deal with it, there's going to be bugs, there's going to be glitches that you're going to have to work out, and that's something that we're going to have to take a look at in the overall big picture. I agree that some things are messed up in the process, but just because there's something messed up in the process doesn't mean you throw the baby out with the bathwater.
So here's our Philadelphia Inquirer, dated October 21st, 2020. That would have been roughly not even 2 weeks before the election. Okay. So, by the way, the deadline to register to vote has come and gone, but you can still request a mail ballot until the 27th of October to request a mail-in ballot in Pennsylvania. All right. And up until this reporting this article, all right, 3 million people had requested them. More than 1 million had returned. So, okay, there were 2 million ballots as of the 21st of October outstanding. But they paused election night counting to wait for more ballots to come in. Okay? They changed the mail-in in October before the election. They were changing the rules. You can say it's because of the pandemic or whatever you want, but we still go places. People are still grocery shopping. They wear their mask or they don't wear their mask. Really depends on where you are. They still go out in public. Millions of people still turn out the polls to vote. Absentee.
And millions of people chose to mail in their ballots.
But there was no verification. Signature verifications, not done. Post dates, not checked. Because elections are held on the first Tuesday of November. Therefore, any ballots received should have been post-dated by at least the first Tuesday of November, November 3rd, 2020. Any ballots coming in after that should not have been counted. But we have no way of verifying that they weren't. We have no way of verifying.
Now, are you just you're speaking talking points from the right side? Have you read any of this yourself? Have you actually looked into it? Are you an actual expert on how the ballot system works?
I'm an expert in the fact that, yes, the dates were extended. Okay? That everybody knows that. That 6 or 7 states had different mail-in ballot dates. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna argue that Pennsylvania said you had till the 10th?
Okay, each state comes up with their own rules. States' rights. I thought that's what you conservatives were about.
But the federal government outlies the federal elections.
Yeah, generally.
Generally, so they can change it and come and go as they want.
If it falls within that general guideline from the federal government, yeah. So that's how it works. That's how states' rights work.
So the federal government oversees federal elections. When it comes to the U.S. House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate and the U.S. President, the federal government outlines that. They are in control of that.
Mm-hmm.
but the states can change their rules.
Yeah.
No, that
Yeah.
that doesn't. They can change. They can change state election rules all they want. I don't care if Pennsylvania says you can vote, 365 days a year. You can vote as many times you want for your state representatives. I don't care, if it becomes like the Major League All Star voting tablature where they take the top 20 people who want to run and, hey, vote as many times as you want. We'll treat you like American Idol. Text this number to this number. But when it comes to the national elections, the federal offices, the federal government has stated everything's lined out. November, the first Tuesday of November is when the election is held.
Right.
You can do early voting up until that day. You can take mail-in ballots up until that day. That means if anything is postmarked after that, it should not be counted. So if there are concerns now, and there are people who have stood up and said this has happened, they've sworn to it, they've signed affidavits. Which, okay, if they are lying, they're going to be held criminally liable for it. But there have been people who have done this. People have stood up and said, no, there were problems. But if there are problems and we can't address it.
Oh, you mean like the Karen in front of Congress? You mean like those kind of people?
Did you say the Karen?
Yeah, that's what I'm calling her because her testimony was absolute garbage.
I'm not talking there. I mean, there were numerous ones, but like I said,
they were all just as bad from what I've seen. None of them offered physical evidence. It was all testimonial. And
what physical evidence are they going to offer you?
Testimony is not as reliable in court as you think it is.
Okay, but what are they supposed to offer you for physical evidence? What?
Pictures, documents, anything.
Okay, so they take a picture in a voting. What happens? If they take a picture in a polling place, what happens?
If someone...
First of all, it's against the law. Let's start off right there. It's against the law to take pictures inside polling places. So
outside of official business.
But if you showed up in a courtroom with a picture inside of a polling place, it's going to be dismissed because it was an illegal action. Right away, whoever is defending that is going to move that it be dismissed because it was an illegal action. You can't commit a crime to prove a crime. So you can't go in there with pictures. Okay? And they were calling for evidence. They said, hey, we want to hold on to these envelopes so that we know that they were signed correctly, that the postmarks were correct. But look, they were thrown away. The envelopes weren't kept with the ballots. They were thrown away.
Okay.
For future reference, we do have to come up with a way to like soften keyboards, because I hear yours, and I know I hear mine when I'm doing the reverse of it. But they wanted the evidence. The evidence was the envelopes. The evidence were the ballots. The envelopes were thrown away. They were not kept with the ballots that they should have been for verification. So the evidence is gone. So somebody destroyed the evidence. Another illegal action.
If there was ever any evidence to begin with.
There was evidence. That's what these people
You don't know that.
There was evidence.
You don't know that.
That's the whole point.
How do you know these people didn't get together and say, oh, we're going to toe Trump's line because we believe in our Fuhrer?
The Fuhrer. I love it. I love when a socialist starts comparing Trump to a Fuhrer. I really do. Because Hitler was the National Socialist Party.
But it was the furthest thing from a socialist if you actually look at what he did. See, this is where us people who study history know what we're talking about.
What did he do? He took a country that had been beaten and battered, was broke and poor, and instead of trying to build them up militarily, cut them down even further, starved them until they all got in line, and then decimated the Jewish population.
No, what?
Now, I don't know about you, but for the last 4 years, I've been making more money. I haven't needed to get in line behind the government. I haven't had to turn to government for help. Oh, but when a pandemic happens and I do need help from the government, what do? They abstain it. So Nancy Pelosi can go, yeah, I didn't want to give the president anything to go in the election for, so I didn't vote for it.
And that right there is the crux of the issue that I actually agree with. when it comes down to corruption and the system being broken, that's the problem right there. They're playing too many politics and they're not doing their actual jobs, what they're sent there to do. That's where we agree. We may agree on the fucking election, and I don't care if I cussed. What the I mean,
We may not agree, and by the way, the podcast is listed as adult content, so whatever. We
okay.
may not agree on the election, but and that's what's funny is that we know there's corruption, and if if we can prove, and like I said last time, this is not a left and right thing. This is an establishment thing. This is people from both sides that were responsible for this.
Mm-hmm.
This is not the Democrat Party behind it. This is both sides were working on this, and that's what we need to discover. We need to discover exactly who was behind everything.
I agree.
We do that. We do that. Not. I'm not. I am not saying that President Trump gets a second term. I am saying that for the first time in this country, when January 20th comes around, he doesn't assume office. Biden doesn't assume office until we know 100% what happened. If that means we got to rehold elections across the entire country, maybe that's what we do. We can all roll out for one day and vote again. Just like when you're kids and you're playing baseball. No, he was safe. No, he was out. No, he was safe. No, he was out. Okay, you know what? Go back to first base. Hit again. Let's see what happens. Okay? Maybe that's what we need to do. Because like I said, this is not just a left and right. This is the establishment. This is Washington, D.C. elitists trying to maintain their power. They came up with this plan.
But the problem with what you're suggesting is there's nothing in the Constitution that would back this, and going against the actual electoral vote that happened is
the Electoral College doesn't have to vote the way the popular. They don't have to. That's the thing. They are not forced to vote the way their states want. They can actually abstain from voting if they so desire.
That's only if they haven't been certified by the time that they go to D.C. Every election's been certified. Every poll has been certified. Every state election has been certified. So now they are locked into their votes. That's why they're pushing so hard for these cases that aren't going to go through because they have no damn evidence and they know it. 55 of the 56 cases that Trump brought in front of federal courts where there's judges on the bench that he put there have said that the cases have no merit because they asked a simple question. Were there people from your side in the room? Yes. Case dismissed. God damn it, I'm out of tea. But bottom line is, yes, I agree in general that there are issues with the election process, not just this year, but every year. Yes, I agree that there's corruption. Hell, I've been screaming it from the rooftops for years. I agree that the system needs a change, but we're not going to get that change because the people in power don't want that change. I mean, look at what happened with Bernie, right?
Yeah, he gets screwed over, but every time he goes back and backs him, he's like a dog that gets beat. Comes back with his tail between his
Yeah,
legs
see,
and supports.
that's the thing that irritates me about Bernie is when I was watching him in 2016 in the debates, there was a point where I saw him just like, even in these latest debates, he's not that great of a debater. He's more of an orator. You put him in there up and let him give an hour speech, he's gonna blow the roof off the joint. But to debate somebody, he's not that great of a debater because he's not that great at taking the point and then coming back and saying, "No, you're wrong. This is where you're wrong on." Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Bernie at his age. He's not that type of fighter. What I'm trying to say. And we need someone who has the principles of Bernie to back the history that Bernie has with being on the right side of history, but who is a fighter. And I don't think we're going to get that in our lifetime. We need essentially a new FDR.
He's not a he rolls over every time. He could have taken all right when they came out with the emails from the DNC that showed that they were supplying Hillary with the interview questions leading up to their debates. Okay, he could have got on and stood at the top of the mountain and screaming out how corrupt it was.
Mm-hmm.
He could have made it to where the DNC could not put Hillary. Well, they should not have put Hillary in that position anyway. Because I don't care what you think, I don't care what you feel. Hillary will never. I wish I had a Jericho sound clip right now to go ever be president because nobody trusts her because she is just a not trustworthy individual. That's all I'm going to say on that one. But he could have stood up and he could have shouted at the top of his lungs. He could have brought all the people that were supporting him, and he could have forced the DNC to make him the nominee.
All this that you're saying, I said it in 2016.
I understand that, but he didn't.
No.
And then he comes back again this year, and he gets screwed over again. Gets screwed over one more time.
Now he got screwed over twice in this time. He got screwed over by Obama and Biden just before Super Tuesday, and then Warren. Warren became a freaking what's his damn name? Famous traitor in American history.
Benedict Arnold?
Yeah, Arnold. I remember his first name, couldn't remember his Arnold. Benedict Arnold. She became the female Benedict Arnold, stabbing Bernie in the back with her, accusing him of being like sexist or something. And I'm just like, freaking really? So I'm done with Elizabeth Warren. Because she was trying to position herself in a Biden administration.
We fast forward to the primaries for, I think it was like Iowa, I don't remember what state. There was like 4 primaries that day. And, we went into lockdown because of this pandemic. And everybody who voted was going to be mail-in ballots. And we all know mail-in ballots are always going to go for the establishment. So Bernie gets screwed again. But then what's he do? Comes back out supporting. Why? Because if he goes against the Democratic Party, they're going to find somebody younger, more appealing than Bernie in Vermont, and Bernie's going to be out. And he knows that. So, again, we come back to this whole interwoven, corrupted system. And if we can prove that these leaders are just using us as pawns for their own personal gain, which we do that by proving that they are trying to negate a vote, and maybe legitimately, maybe Biden did win. Maybe honestly, if the numbers were accurate and everything was on the up and up, maybe he did win.
It's like I said, I don't think that there's enough. Like I said when you asked me this question on a previous session, I think there was some fraud. I think it was on the level of 2016 and most of the elections previously. I don't think it was on the level of, change the election level. I don't think it was the Russiagate level, which I'm one of those who's consistent enough to say that I thought Russiagate was a whole freaking joke to begin with. Because the biggest thing you could say about the whole Russiagate thing was that they paid for ads to run on social medias to try to influence people in our elections. That's about it. They didn't get
China.
I mean, but if you really look at it, businesses in the states do that as well. So, what are you bitching about? We either get rid of all of it or none of it.
We'll get rid of the whole system.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. You said you don't think there was anything superfluous as far as
I haven't seen anything that
scandal goes.
damning. I haven't seen anything that damning that's outside of what I've seen in past elections that I've looked at, that I've read up on.
So last time we talked about this, I brought up. Okay, I'm gonna go back through it again. Biden. Okay, let's talk about Joe Biden. Let's talk about Sleepy Joe. Okay, how active was he on the campaign trail?
40 some years in Congress hasn't done a damn thing. I agree. He's a fucking horrible choice.
No. Scratch that. We're talking election 2020. That's what our focus is on right now. Mm-hmm. Election 2020. How much campaigning did Biden do?
About as much as Hillary, if not a little less.
Okay. How big were his crowds? Now, I know he was.
Some places were horribly small. Some places were big. Not gigantic, but big. He wasn't getting Bernie-sized crowds.
Okay, well, can we even say this, though? Let's put him right up with his competitor. Was he getting Trump-sized crowds?
Probably not.
Okay. You don't have to like the president, but you do have to admit, he draws a crowd. He's got support.
Mm-hmm.
I drive, with my job, I'm in Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, little spots of Georgia, South Georgia. Okay. I see him everywhere. I see Trump signs everywhere. They're still going. The man has a draw. He has a following. Okay. Now, but we're gonna put if he were to hear this, what's up, Mark? If he were to hear this, he would probably you're fired. But we're gonna put him on the back burner. We're not gonna talk about the president right now. I don't want to talk about the president right now. Okay. I want to talk about Joe. So
can I make one point here real quick though?
Go ahead.
So you're talking about Trump's base, and I don't argue with you. He has a base. He has a crowd. He has a following. His following is the less politically educated of the population. The people who say, I don't follow politics, and they don't read into the difference between a lefty and a righty. They don't read into what socialism actually means. And I'm not saying this applies to everybody who supports Trump. Let me be very clear. I know a lot of people, yourself included, who are Trump supporters who are very, read up and know pretty much what you're talking about for the most part. I mean, you may not have read every little thing, but you've done a little reading and outside of that. Same for, I would include Mark in that category as well. In the category that I'm throwing you into. I'm just saying that for the majority of Trump supporters, I think they're all just working class people who don't normally follow politics. And they get hyped up on the emotion of what Trump is saying instead of actually thinking about it. I think that's his base.
Okay. All right. What's up, man? All right. So, okay. Got it. But I do want to go back to Joe. So, yeah, Sleepy Joe draws no crowd whatsoever, stumbles over his words. My favorite, I've got to get this YouTube clip up for this, but it's when he's talking about, Joe Biden can beat Joe Biden. Well, yeah, pretty much accurate on that one. I mean, not drawing a crowd, no kind of momentum. We had Trump trains, okay? I didn't hear about a Biden barrage. I'll go with that. That's about as
Biden barge.
But now we're going to flash forward to the election results, and you're going to tell me that somebody with no kind of poll whatsoever, all right, is going to outdo, or he's going to match, in my opinion, one of the greatest Democratic presidents in the country's history, JFK, okay, in the fact that he won the election, lost Ohio. Okay, Ohio's a bellwether state. I'm going to bring back that 19 out of 20 bellwether counties that didn't go. And you're just like, well, it happens.
I'll tell you why I'm laughing in a minute.
Go ahead. No, I mean, hold on, no, go ahead. My point is, we have these anomalies that stick out that really should be garnishing attention because they are, in an essence, evidence in a way, because it's something that doesn't fit the narrative of he won outright, but he lost in bellwethers. He lost a key state that no president has won an election without carrying. If you remember 2016, Ohio went to Trump. It was a big deal because he won Ohio. But now we got a guy who lost Ohio, lost 19 out of 20 bellwethers, was losing on election night. I mean, at election night, Trump was winning. And then we come back Wednesday morning and he's losing overnight. When all these, this is when all the anomalies started as far as the ballots coming in and power going out and problems happening in voting centers and people just stop counting. And this is the stuff, this is where you say, I don't think, and this is why the rest of us are going, something's not right here. And I even know people that are diehard Democrats that say, yeah, something doesn't seem quite right, but we've never seen anything like this, not on this level. Like I've said before, the establishment is working on cheating, trying to perfect their cheating system, and they didn't quite get it right this time, but now we have no means of drawing attention to it because the Supreme Court doesn't even want to hear it. They just want to ignore it and push it off to it's a state responsibility. But you're not going to get states that are controlled by Democratic governors and Democratic Congresses to do anything about it because their outcome is what they got. They want it. And to you.
Well, this is going to be kind of a long one, so bear with me. All right. So, why I was laughing, you brought up JFK, which I find kind of funny because JFK was and his dad were known for election engineering.
Well, yeah.
So,
Kennedy's in general.
I mean, the fact that you're bringing up Kennedy and talking about election engineering, election fraud, and being that adamantly we need to sue and bring it to the Supreme Court. Well, we could have done it then, but we didn't. But that's beside the point of what we're talking about. That's why I want to let you know why I was laughing. What I wanted to say was you brought up the point of too many things don't make sense. Well, my thinking on that is I'm not a poll person. I'm not someone who counts ballots. I'm not in that position. I don't know about that, so I don't know how that's collected. I don't know the federal law. I'm just like any average person. So for me to say, I don't know how this works. I've never seen how this works. And then to say, oh, something is messed up because it doesn't make sense. Just because it doesn't make sense to me just means I don't understand. It doesn't mean that there's something actually wrong. Now, to be clear, is that saying that there is nothing wrong? No, absolutely not. There's a possibility something could be wrong. But until I see in black and white or in picture or whatever that, something was caught, or a collection of data can show me that this is fraud, this is this, that, or the other thing, then I'll entertain it. But until then, our election is run just like it has been run in the past 2, 3, 4 decades. And take it back to 2016. Was I upset Trump won? You damn right I was. Why was I upset Trump won? Was because Trump is what he said he was against. And I don't care what side of the aisle you're on, if you can't look at Trump and see that he said one thing but did another, then you're just deluding yourself.
I mean, how do you? All right, repeat that one. Said another. What was that?
Trump's campaign does not match Trump's presidency. Trump campaigned on ending the wars. He hasn't done that. Trump campaigned on draining the swamp. He didn't that. He actually put more water into the fucking swamp. And just look at his damn cabinet. Trump campaigned on bringing jobs home. This man has put more money into putting jobs overseas than he has jobs here. So, and the stimulus package that he approved, yeah, we got $1,200, but the establishment that you keep talking about got the most out of that. We got corporate subsidies and corporate socialism, while the rest of us got crony capitalism for the working people. So to sit there and say Trump is this great messiah of conservative politics, I'll actually agree with that, actually, because extreme right-wing conservatism, that's what this is. Crony capitalism, socialism for the rich, and privatization for everybody else.
Yeah, it's weird because in the job I had when Trump started his presidency, I saw growth. I worked at a job where I was actually directly going to people's houses and selling them products, and I saw growth.
Mm-hmm.
People that usually were like, "Yeah, man, I don't have a job. We're back to work." Another job I had where I dealt with business, it was a business to business position. Same situation. More people getting hired, more people going to work, more money in my pocket, the commission at the end of the day. Okay, so it depends where you sit. All right, I saw through my own eyes, my physical evidence was my paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
My physical evidence was I saw growth. I saw people making it in the world. Okay, and under you know, it's hard for me to correlate this because the reality is you keep always saying evidence, 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 but when you have people that are trying to dig, trying to give the evidence, trying to get deeper into the situation, but then this is where I come back to the very very beginning. 17 states, 100 representatives want further digging. They want to know what is going on.
All
what
Republicans,
in
by
these
the way.
4 states. Was it Dominion? Was it
All
absentee?
Republicans.
Was it mail-in? Was it whatever? They want to know what happened, so they want the Supreme Court to weigh in, so they get more options.
Do you really
The
think
Supreme,
they did this out of the kindness of their hearts, or are they towing a party line where the Republican Party is saying, okay, we're all going to go after this because our president says we're going to do this?
okay, so just repeat that sentence back to yourself. I'm going to say yes, but repeat that sentence back to yourself. Okay, how many people sitting up in Washington D.C. right now, Republicans, okay, would be more than happy not to see Trump sitting in the White House?
Publicly, none of them.
No, no, no. Yeah, okay.
Publicly, none of them. None of them will go against Trump because they
What do you mean
know.
nobody would go against Trump? We've had never Trumpers from the get go. Mitt Romney, still to this day, 4 years later, still as anti-Trump as they can get. There are adamantly members of the Republican Party who are anti-Trump.
Yeah, the guy that was having a dinner with Trump like a couple months back. Yeah, okay.
Every time he gets a chance to say something in the microphone, he's going to bash the president. He'd be more than happy to see him go. There'd be quite a few people that would be more than happy to see him go. People that would just sit there and not say and do anything. Okay, they're not towing a
Not
party line.
enough.
They don't care.
There's not enough. One or two here or there does not mean that everybody's against Trump.
Yeah. Well, my
But
point
for
is,
the majority, for majority of the Republican Party, they're going to toe the president's line.
okay, so they stand up. I mean, let me get this right. Okay, so there are people, the majority of establishment, lifer politicians that do not like President Trump. They haven't liked him since 2015. They don't want to see him in the role anymore. They'd be more than happy to see anybody in the White House other than him. Okay, so here they have the opportunity just to sit there and not do anything. Okay, and but they're going to stand up and do something anyway. I no, I mean 100 of them, no. There may be like maybe 30 or 40 that would have stood up. The other 50 would have just sat down, and it doesn't matter because Mitt Romney's going to win re-election. Okay, uh, it's they don't care. So no, but it comes back to the point that you say we need evidence, but here are people who want the evidence. We need to be able to dig deeper, but the Supreme Court won't hear it to give their opinion, and when they give their opinion, then something else can be done. Because the Supreme Court comes back and says, well, after review, there may be some questions with how the election, not how, but when the election rules were changed, what they were changed to, and how they don't line up with the federally set guidelines when it comes to federal elections. So now we need to look into something else.
What's the source of these federal guidelines that you're talking about?
Um, Generally, the Constitution. I don't know. I haven't looked into it, but we know. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So you're going to argue that it's not set forth that the national elections take place on the first Tuesday.
No, I'm not going to argue that point because that's in the Constitution. But my point was that you were talking about these federal. You just mentioned these federal set forth through federal guidelines for elections.
Yes.
As far
Okay,
as I could tell,
here it is right here. Here it is. Mark, I hope you're listening to this. So, the federal government, the U.S. Constitution says election day is November 3rd
mm-hmm.
or the first Tuesday of November. Therefore, we should not take any absentee, mail in votes, or anything of the such that comes any date postdated after the first Tuesday of November. So, in this
that's
election,
not what that
anything
says.
that was postdated
That's
should
not what that
not be
says.
accepted after November 3rd.
That's
We
not
agree on
what
that.
says. No,
We don't.
no, we don't.
Why?
Because that's not what the Constitution says. It says the federal election date is the what was it?
The first Tuesday of November.
Right. Didn't say all that other crap you just said. Stop trying to shoehorn stuff in.
I'm not. I'm saying the Constitution says election day, first Tuesday of November. So
right.
Therefore,
now
in the year 2020, the first Tuesday was November 3rd. Therefore, we should not take any ballots mail in that were post dated after November 3rd. They should not be accepted votes.
Agreed.
Okay. Now, we go through and we want to find the ballots that were post dated after November 3rd. Where are they?
Don't know.
That's the problem. That is my issue. That is my personal issue. Is that because things were not done properly?
That's because, like I was saying earlier, that particular process is relegated to the state, each individual state, and how they're going to collect ballots. The federal government sets forth guidelines that are within the umbrella of the Constitution. As long as they don't violate the Constitution, they can come up with any federal guidelines for elections that they like.
So
then,
if Pennsylvania says that you have until the 10th of November to get your mail-in ballots in, that does not go against the Constitution.
I think they have a case for it going against the Constitution. Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. That's my whole issue with this. Is that that's what Pennsylvania did. That is knowledge. Pennsylvania gave people, actually I think it was longer, I think it was 10 days. So they get until the 13th of November to get votes in, which they can't do. But the problem is because the envelopes were thrown away, we don't have a way of seeing the postmarks anymore. So we don't know exactly how many should not have been taken in. And man, ooh, if that was 30 seconds, I might put a roll in there. But that's my problem. That is it right there. 10 days after the election goes against the Constitution and the outlines set forth for the election. Therefore, the Supreme Court should step in and say, wait a second, Pennsylvania's rule that says we could take it 10 days after does not fit in with what the Constitution says. There is a problem. Now we need a route to fix it. commonly the route would be, okay, so we go through and we take any votes that were postmarked after the third and we throw them away. And if that was something that could be done, I'd be satisfied with it. And if we did that and then the results came back and said Biden still won, I'd be okay with that. But we can't do that because envelopes have been thrown away, procedures were not followed, and so here we are at a mess. And it's not a mess that we go, we fix later, because now they have a way to unfix it in 4 years, or 8 years, or 12 years. So I say to hell with it. Let's just undo the whole damn thing. Viva la revolution.
So I say that, yeah, there was some major issues that should be worked out. I think that for the time being, all the votes count. Because you cannot say which ones were illegitimate and which ones weren't, going based off of what you're saying, right? I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt. I'm giving your argument the benefit of the doubt for the time being until I read more into this. But for now, I will say, if you can't tell which ones are legitimate and illegitimate, you count them all. Because when you start saying, okay, well, this one's legitimate, but this one's not legitimate because I think it didn't arrive at that time. So now you're just throwing out votes and rigging an election, and you're doing the same thing that you're accusing the other side of doing. So you just count it all and let it go. If the Supreme Court hears it, the Supreme Court hears it. If not, we get a massive movement to get this whole election thing taken care of, which starts with a overhaul of the Federal Election Commission.
See, I'm in the opposite. I say if you can't verify which ones were legitimate and which ones weren't, don't count any of them.
Then that's unconstitutional.
No, it's not, because now we hold a special election. We hold special elections all the time. So for the states where we can't validate things, the states that had these issues, you hold a special election.
Where in the Constitution does it say anything about the special election for the president for the federal election? No. Where in the Constitution does it say anything about holding another election for the president or the federal election? Where?
Okay.
Nowhere.
Well, I don't know where, but then you tell me why Georgia has special elections in their state constitution. If a 51%, if a candidate does not receive 51%, then they have a second election. They have a special election.
For their state, right? That's
for Congress. That's for their Congress. That's for the representative and the senators. That's what's happening right now with Ossoff and Loeffler and these other two, the Senate nominees, or the Senate candidates and the House candidates. In January, or no, it's not January, it's later in December. They will have another election because neither one got 51% of the vote, so they'll have another election to see who wins. And that's a federal. Those are the Congress candidates.
Yeah. I got you.
Damn. So you have a special election. You tell the people of Pennsylvania, Georgia, Wisconsin, Michigan. Okay,
for the presidential election?
What?
What for the
you have a special election for the president.
I don't think you can get away with that.
If we can't, why? We can do it on Congress level. If the state can do it on Congress level, you can't pick and choose. We got to cut. We're like at 59 minutes. All right, we're gonna to be continued this episode. So we got the outros real quick. All right, we didn't do our typical intros, so I'm gonna go ahead and spit through this really fast. As you can tell, I am Drew, the talker, the loudmouth, the asshole. And of course, you can follow me on twitch.tv/Seeker, SEIKER 84, or you can find me Drew_DARROW. That's my Twitter handle. Find me there, add me, and of course, kick over to my buddy Will.
All right, so my name is William. You can find me on Twitch at RamblingMan101684. There you can find the links to all my other social media, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, all of that. They're in the panels in my About section. Thank you for tuning in and giving us your attention. Until next one, peace and have a good one, y'all.
Adios. Whew, we got right at an hour. Damn.